Before we start, I guess you want to know who is part of this webinar today. My name is not Polarion Marketing. My name is Daniel Morris from Polarion Software. I'm located in Germany right now, so I'm living in Germany and I'm in the professional services of Polarion Software, where I do a lot of trainings and Polarion presentations to new customers who want to see what Polarion is capable of. And of course, I'm the man if you have got any technical questions, where you can send an email to ask something about Polarion and how it works. And today's not only a Polarion software presentation, we also have one of our partners from Tricentis with me.
Good morning. My name is Siva Sundararaman, and I'm a Solutions Development Manager with Tricentis. I'm based out of Jersey City, New Jersey, in North America. And I'm a part of the solutions development team, and I work very closely with customers to understand their requirements around test automation, and I propose and build custom solutions that meet their requirements.
Before we start with the live demonstration, let me say something about Polarion software, and Siva will also tell you something about Tricentis. Well, Polarion is leading in requirement management, test management, and application lifecycle management. So we are well known all over the world. Polarion itself is an application lifecycle management, which means you don't have to integrate so much other tools. Of course, you can integrate some tools like Tricentis. That's what we are going to see today. But Polarion itself does requirement management, task management, test management, and so on. We are not. The test automation, for test automation, you can use other tools, and that's what we are going to show you today. We are in business since 2004, and right now we do have a lot of users. More than 1 million users are using technologies of Polarion right now. We are working in the open source community as well, and there we have some other tools which are used. Well, more than 200 and a global 1,000 are customers of our company. You can already see some of our customers on this page. And we are not specialized on specific customers. Well, we do have customers in the medical companies. We do have automotive and so on. So we're not a specialized company. We do have a strong global presence. So we do have our headquarters in Stuttgart in Germany. And we also have headquarters in the US, and a lot of other countries are there. We have got some partners who help us out to make some trainings, to be technical support for you, and to introduce Polarion. So far about Polarion.
This is about Tricentis. So Tricentis was founded in 1997. We are headquartered in Vienna, Austria. And I'm speaking from the North American headquarters, which is in Jersey City. So the company was founded with the principle of helping customers in the test consulting space. And one of the areas that we had solid expertise was around leveraging a lot of the tools, the test automation tools that were out there, and implementing them for our customers. And what happened through our experience there was that we understood a lot of the pain areas that our customers were facing in terms of maintaining the test automation suites, and the key areas being the maintenance of the scripts were expensive. The test automation coverage could not exceed beyond a certain level because of the overhead of script maintenance. In 2006, we launched our own proprietary tool, and it is the Tosca Test Suite. And Tosca Test Suite helps you build automated regression suites, and it helps non-technical users to be able to participate in the automation exercise without having to be able to know about the underlying technologies. And some of that will be in demonstration today, so you will be able to appreciate how Tosca can easily help you manage your test automation lifecycle and help business testers to be able to be involved in developing and managing automated test suites.
Let's have a look what we are going to do today. It won't be a completely live demonstration. We'll show you how this integration will work. We will do the requirement management part in Polarion. We say, okay, we want to specify requirements. Maybe we want to review this requirement, do a review process, maybe export our specification to some other guys who can do a review, send it back So we will have them fully reviewed, and after these are reviewed, we will send them to Tosca. And I guess Siva can explain a little bit better what will be done in Tosca.
Sure. Thanks, Daniel. So once we get the requirements from Polarian, these requirements will then be used inside Tosca to capture coverage and traceability. As you can see, there are several sections of the Tosca tool. We start at the requirements, and once you gather the requirements from Polarian, you can then build your own test models using our test case design, which is the red section. And once you build the test design, which is basically modeling test combinations to ensure you have test coverage for your requirements, you can then go to the blue section where we help you build cognitive test cases. And what we mean by cognitive test cases is we rely on the business model as the tool for test automation. We help you build logical models of your applications, whether it be visual interface applications or non-visual applications, and help you achieve faster and quicker automation. Once you build your manual or automated test suites inside Tosca, you then go to the green section, which is the execution list, and this is the place where you run and manage your test cases. And once you have the test cases executed, you have detailed reporting and reporting about execution in terms of the tests that passed, failed, and there is also defect integration with Polarian. So the results of a test execution is then provided back to Polarian, and then you can basically manage your life cycle of the requirements from inside Polarian.
After they were transferred back to Polarian, of course, there can be some changes that we say, okay, we need to change something on the requirement, we need to add something because of the test results, or we need to assign some tasks to our developers to implement something different, and then we'll head back from the life cycle to the requirements, and maybe we'll have to write some new requirements, make some changes another time, and then the life cycle gets on another time that we say, okay, we have some new requirements which might be transferred to Tosca, and then it will happen again. And that's what we are doing one life cycle today. And the next slide will explain to you what will happen technically, and that's something Siva will introduce you and tell you.
Thanks, Daniel. I'll just build out the slide. So what we are doing is Tosca has an integration plugin that's built into Polarian, and it's through a web service interface. We can do a synchronization operation from the Tosca requirement section, which will help gather all the requirements that have been created inside Polarian. And once we have the requirements from Polarian, we basically take those requirements and model manual or automated test cases inside Tosca. So we then create your test suite, regression test suite inside Tosca, and then we execute the test cases. We get the information about the status of that execution, along with information about the pass fail, and then we send that execution result into Polarian along with any defects that might have occurred during the test execution. We send that information and all the reporting data back to Polarian from Tosca. So that is the workflow that we will be utilizing today to demonstrate the integration between Tosca and Polarian.
Okay. Before we head to the live demo, I want to have a look if we already have some questions. I see some of you are already trying to ask some questions via the chat. It would be nice if you use the Q&A panel. It would be much easier for us. Here is a question if this is part of a continuous integration process. I would say this can be a part of continuous integration. It doesn't need to be, but yeah, it's possible to do this, yeah, as a short answer. That's it for the questions. So now, please use the Q&A if you do have another question. I will start with the Polarian presentation right now. Let's go into the browser. That's Polarian. If some of you don't know what Polarian is and how Polarian looks like, it's in a web browser, so you can access it from everywhere if you have at least one of the supported browsers. Our supported browsers are Google Chrome, Firefox, or an Internet Explorer. Safari isn't officially supported, but Safari is using the same toolkit, this Google Web Toolkit, as Chrome. So I think it might be possible to use Polarian with Safari. And yeah, you don't need to install anything else on your computer. You only need a browser, so you don't need to install any extensions or plugins so that it will be possible to use Polarian. You only need the web browser. And well, the nice thing would be you can just take this link, send it to a colleague, and he can log in via his username and password, and so we get access to the project. They can see the things you want to share with them. Before we start to go into this insurance documents, so that would be our example for today, that we have a specification which describes how insurance for cars is specified. I'll start with some work items to check how these work items look like. So we can have, for example, start with a list of all work items, but right now only the requirements are important for me. And the goal of Polarion is always to make it easy for new people to get into Polarion. And that's why we tried to have some views which look like, for example, this view look like Excel or look like Word, because Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel are the tools nearly everyone all over the world knows who is going to work with requirements or test cases. So this is some sort of Excel view where you have your columns and you can sort for these columns, and of course you can also add some columns and say, okay, maybe I want to see some more attributes in here. And I always say, okay, this is not only an Excel view, it's some sort of like Outlook view as well, that I do have my work items above, and if I click on these work items, I will see these work items below here as well, and in a small preview. If we have a look for the different vehicles, for example, I can open this one and I get a lot of information in here. I can also activate this light form, for example, to get only the information which is relevant for me based on the status of this work item. I see this requirement right now is in a status draft, and I see the severity and this priority, which are mandatory fields. I see this because of this asterisk in here. If I go on and say, okay, I want to send it to a review, I will see that this one has changed. This attribute I had before isn't visible anymore. And right now I want to get all the information in Polarion, and I want to see everything, all the attributes which are in here. And these attributes and the workflow state and everything is completely configurable. So you can build up your processes to your needs, because some of you are already working with some process for more than 10 years, and if you want to work with a tool, you don't want to change your processes. You want to have your process in the tool, and because of that, you can configure Polarion like you need it with all the attributes you need. And you've got different attributes. We don't have any categories specified right now, but with this plus icon, this is a multi-field. We can see this on the assignee as well, that we say, okay, we do have more than one assignee. We do have Mark Test as assignee for this requirement. We do have Steve Developer for this, and we also do have the system administrator. So you can have multiple fields. You can also have some enumeration, like here with the severity. You've got the enumeration must have, should have, nice to have, and will not have. So you can decide that users are only able to change to a specific enumeration. You can have some initial estimate field, which is duration, a duration field. You can have some field like a date here that you can take a specific date. So these attributes can be different types. They can be string fields. They can be rich text fields, like the description is, for example. So you've got a lot of options in here, and this workflow state is also configurable. What is the next workflow? Right now I was in the state draft, and I want to go on to a review, and after the review I would say, okay, they are approved maybe. And these workflow is configurable, and the workflow and these attributes are configurable for each work item type. So you can have a different workflow for a test case. And these work item types are also configurable. So if you say, okay, I don't have this sort of test execution or execution list, my work items should be called different. You can add your own work items in here. Of course, we provide a lot of templates, so you don't have to start with nothing. So you can use a template. For example, if you're in the automotive industry, we have some templates for automotive, and you already get some configured work items, workflows, and so on. So you should have a look at our templates. There are lots of templates which will fit to your needs. I think I don't need to explain a description, what a description is, but we also have some different tools. We have got the comments field where you have a sort of communication, where you can communicate with your colleagues. We have a work records field where you can track the time you spend to work on these work item types. We do have an approval field, where you can say, okay, I want to approve, or I need to approve this work item, and I need to have an electronic signature as well, that this is really approved. And for this, we can activate the electronic signature, and then you have to log in by a username and password another time, and then this work item will be e-signed. You've got this linked revisions where you can link source code you have implemented for this work item that can be linked directly to this work item, and you will see all the source code which is available for this work item. We see some other work items which are already linked to this requirement, and in which project they are. They can be in different projects as well. So you can have, for example, one project where you only have some business requirements, and you can link these business requirements to these requirements which are in this project. So this is possible. You can have hyperlinks, links to the web, for example, and you can attach something to your work item that you say, okay, I do have a PDF which is really interesting for this requirement, and I want to attach this one. You can also vote for a work item that you say, okay, I like this one. I will want to have this one to be a high priority. For this you can vote. And of course, if you don't want your colleagues to vote for a work item, you can say, okay, I don't want this in here. So you can configure it. And last but not least, you do have this watches where you say, okay, I'm not the assignee for this work item type, but I'm really interested in this work item. And for this, I can add myself as a watcher, and I get some notifications about changes of this work item. Okay, I don't want to save this right now, so I press cancel. What's important for me is, okay, now we know how these requirements look like. But if we want to specify something, we don't want to work on these items. We want to work in a specification. And for this, we do have this word-like editor in Polarion. This is could be, for example, something out of a Word import or an Excel import. And this is a specification in Polarion, so you don't need any Word installed on your computer to work on this. This is a Polarion view of this data. And in here, we see some images, for example, some free text, some headings. And we also have some work items in here. And of course, you can also select some text as a requirement, for example. But this is now not a requirement. This is some free text, so we don't want to select this as a requirement, but you can. And you can also say, okay, let's add another work item, a new requirement to this document. So we just simply press enter, and I'll add a new requirement. We want to have a requirement for a truck as well for an insurance document. So we say, okay, we need a special insurance for trucks. And we can also say, okay, maybe I want to have another thing. Maybe I want to paste an image, for example, to this, let's say for this semi-trailer. It's like, okay, let's paste something in here. Say we want to insert an image. I choose an image from my hard drive, and I take this image, for example, to the semi-trailer, and I can also say, okay, this one works. Maybe I want to add another time. So I only press enter, and I will jump into a new requirement. If I don't want to add another requirement, I only have to press enter twice, and I'll jump back into the free text mode. So you see, simply by pressing enter, you can create new requirements. And in this document, you do have the standard functionality you might expect from a normal Word document. You can insert tables, you can make something fat, or it's called bold or italic. And of course, you can add different work item types if you want to. Right now, it's only configured that requirements might be part of the specification. But of course, you can also add some test cases in here. Or you want to insert some nice diagram in here that you say, okay, I want to explain my use case a little bit better. Then you can say, okay, I as a user want, for example, I need some keys to open the lock of my truck. It's a stupid example right now, but it's just to explain to you that you can insert diagrams in your specification, and you can paint your diagrams in here. I saved the specification, and right now let's say, okay, this one is ready. We have finished to work on this specification, but these requirements need to be reviewed by some other people. Of course, you can do this review online, that you say, okay, I want to add some comments into the specification. But maybe we have some users which don't use Polarion right now. They want to have some Word specification back. So we can say, okay, I want to export this document, and I do have different options. So they can review this document, and they are not allowed to make any changes. Or we say, okay, they can use this prioritization mode, where they can change some specific things. For example, here, the severity and the title. And of course, they can also add comments. I don't want them to be able to change the title, only to change the severity. Third option, collaboration, is for a full export. So users can change the title, can change the description, how they would be able to do it in Word. But I don't want to give them the possibility to do this because I have structured my document right now, and I don't want to give a customer, for example, the ability to change the description of everything. He can only add comments to say, okay, this requirement isn't specified as I meant it. So I'll take this prioritization. I want to send it to a customer or for review to colleagues, and I don't want my colleagues to change something directly. They should add a comment, and they are allowed to change the severity. So I say start, and I get an export of this document. And this export, let me check, do I already have some questions? I guess we have some questions. Okay, I will answer this question later on. First, I will save this document and open it to have a look how it looks like in Word. Here we have our insurance document, which has now a Polarion software logo, but of course this you can insert your logo into this specification, so they will really see, okay, this is my specification document, and this has a specific revision. Of course, you can build up templates for this. This document right now is in a read-only mode. Like I choose, they shouldn't be able to change something in here. But of course, I do have my requirements in here as well, as a truck or the semi-trailer. Then I cannot change this, but I can say, okay, this motorcycle insurance should be nice to have. This automobile insurance is, I don't need an insurance for this automobile right now. But this truck, I need an insurance. This is a must-have. And I can add some comments that I say, okay, for the insurance, for example, I'll say, okay, I'll type a comment and say, I don't need insurance for cars right now. I'll press save, and I re-import it back to Polarion. But I say, okay, let's take this. We get it back via email. We get this document. Where did I save this? Up here in downloads. Say open, and re-import my changes back so I can see what was done by my colleagues. So if we have a look, we already see this comment right here. I'll come to this later. And right now we see, okay, here are some changes. Motorcycle is nice to have, automobile will not have, and this truck is a must-have. But how should I know what changes were made by my colleagues? I can go into the history of Polarion, and I see all the changes which were done in this document. So I can mark the last two versions of this document and compare them to have a look what changes were made. And I'll jump with this directly to the first changes, and I get highlighted the changes which were made in the specification. That I changed this one from must-have to nice-to-have. And of course, I can also have a look into work items and see on which work items were what changes made. And I can also, after I've seen, okay, what was done, I jump back onto the comment and I see, okay, I don't need an insurance for cars right now. And this comment was made by Daniel Morris on this date at this time. But right now I'm logged in as a system administrator. So Polarion took the user of Office. So you can say, okay, I'll send it to more than one people, to different people, and they can make their comments. You re-import their comments back, and you will see who made what comment. And of course, you can reply as well and say, okay, and you will see it will be tracked that this comment was made by the system administrator. Right now, that's now the comment of the user who is logged into Polarion. That's how you specify this in Polarion. And of course, you can also have specifications for tests and for defects and everything. But that's for the first, we said requirements we do in Polarion, and now we will transfer them to Tosca. And Siva will show you how Tosca will manage these requirements and what can be done in Tosca with these requirements. So I'll stop sharing of my screen right now, and I'll hand it over to you, Siva.
Thanks, Daniel.
You're welcome.
I hope everybody can see my screen, and it should say Tasker Commander. So this is the one central place from where you can build and manage your automated test suites. Now there are several sections in here. We have requirements, we have the test design, the test. So the requirements is the place where we are now. So what I've done is I've just grouped all these areas in one workspace so that it's easy. We have all the requirements listed down here. Now, as you know, Daniel actually created a requirement for trucks. So at any point of time, if you wanted to know the list of requirements and the status of those requirements, you can always synchronize the requirements with Polarian. So Daniel was going ahead and he created a requirement for truck. Now, if you wanted to know at a particular point of time, you can always synchronize the requirements with Polarian. So let's say I do a synchronize of my requirements with Polarian. It basically brings you back an updated status. It's going to ask you which requirements you want to sync. Now let's say I'm syncing a truck. So you can basically click on OK, and it's going to sync all the requirements from Polarian, and it's going to bring back that information back here. So any updates that you make to your requirements tracking under Polarian is always available to you in sync, along with information about the status of the test. Now, once we have the requirements, we then have to model test cases. Now that's where Tasker comes into picture. As I said before, Tasker makes it extremely easy for you to build automated test cases. Now we have a requirement for a truck, and we now know that we have to test it against an application. Now I'm going to use a sample HTML application that looks like this. We start with the home page, which is where you select a type of vehicle. You're going to build an automated test suite for the requirements of trucks. So we go through a series of screens where it's going to ask you for some specific information about the vehicle details, the insurance details, and the product, and it is going to give you a quote. Now we are going to use Tasker to build an automated test suite to test this particular workflow. Now let me go back to Tasker. Now in the requirements, you have the ability to risk weight your requirements. So at any point of time, you know what percentage of your requirements have been covered in terms of test cases and the test execution. So once you have that link, we go into the blue section, which is for the test cases. Now, the first thing we need to do is, for example, if I'm trying to automate this particular screen, I need to capture all the information that I see on this page. Now, in order to achieve that, Tasker provides you with a utility that you can use. Now, I'm going to go into the section called modules. A module is nothing but an abstract representation for all the technical information. Now, the purpose with which Tasker was built is we wanted to make it extremely easy for non-technical users to go in and build automated test cases. We want to leverage their functional domain expertise, and we want them to use that to build automated test suites so that you have faster test executions. Now, what I will do is I'll start the Tasker wizard, and as you can see, the wizard has started, and you have the option of scanning the entire page with the scan button, or you can select a section of the page and identify the components from that particular region. Now let's see what happens when I click scan. So the Tasker wizard has automatically identified what type of an engine is going to be used for this. This is a HTML application, so it automatically loads the HTML engine. Now let me take this cursor, and if I point it on Internet Explorer, it will tell you that it's going to use a Win32 engine because IE is a Windows application. Similarly, if I have a Java Swing application, it will automatically load it. So it doesn't matter how you built your application. It can be SAP, it can be HTML, Flash, Flex. Tasker doesn't really care. So it helps the business tester to be easily able to identify all the objects that's available on the page. Now I just clicked on the page, and it is now looking through this page, and it's going to bring back the list of elements. Now these are the objects that you see on the page, and the good part is we don't rely on the locations of these objects. Now tomorrow make can go to the bottom of the page, it doesn't matter. The script that you build is still going to function effectively. So I'm going to pick a list of controls from here. Now you can see that there is a red highlight. So you clearly know which control is being chosen. So I will just pick up a set of controls, and I need these buttons for navigation. So I'm going to pick them as well. And you can give them any logical business names. So you can always call it performance, and I can call this vehicle details page. and I'm going to create a module. So we have now captured all the information, the technical information from that page, and I've closed the wizard. Now as you can see, a representation of the model is now available. There were several drop downs on that page. For example, we had a drop down for year, which already had a set of values, and that information is also captured automatically. Now, once you build that model, we then go into this blue section, and we are now going to create a test case. So I will use the context menu and say create a test case, and I'll say truck calculations. Now, if I have to add test steps to my test case, I'm basically going to take that page and I'm going to drag and drop it on the truck calculations. So that is how I add test steps into Tosca. Now I'm just going to use some static test data in here for some testing. So let me just fill out these test data. You can of course send the data from a spreadsheet or a database. I'll show you how to do that. So I'm just going to enter some test data, and this is a button, so of course I can click on the next button, so I'm going to do that. And I'm going to quickly run this test step and make sure everything on this test looks good. So let me run this test step. So the test is now in progress, so it has now entered some values and the test execution is complete. So the test looks good and everything is good so far. Now the challenge we have is when something changes in this application. Now as we are all aware, things keep changing. Now when changes happen to the application, it becomes a huge maintenance overhead, because you then have to now, if you had used a framework, you then have to now update the templates, you have to now update driver scripts, you had a new control. So automation becomes a big overhead, and you need to make sure that if your testing is going to be effective, you need to make sure that your applications and the test scripts are in sync. Now Tosca provides you a very, very easy way to handle this one. Now I'm going to go to the source code of this application and I'm going to make some changes. For example, I'm going to make a change to this field. So I'm going to call it brand. I'm a developer of my application and I made a change. Now I will just refresh my page so that the change is affected, and I'm going to try and run the test case again. Okay, let's try and run the test case. Let's see what happens. So we had a change in the application. Now with the way we are used to doing traditional test automation, you now have to go and fix your scripts, come back before you can proceed with the execution. Now that is where we actually have a significant differentiator. We give you some override options. Now the first step, I know why this particular test case failed, because it was not able to recognize a particular field. Now I can always say this needs to be fixed, and I already know my test data that I need to use. So I can always say for, and I can continue with my test. So the first override is, even if the script has broken, you still have the ability to continue with your test suite. Now the original problem is still that my automation script needs to be fixed so that the next time when I try to execute my test, it runs seamlessly, and ensure that any changes to this page does not affect all my 25-30 scripts that are sitting out there. Now Tosca will enable you to do that by going into your module and saying synchronize with Tosca wizard. Now what happens is, it analyzes your existing model with your application and tells you what happened in this application. So it's going to tell you the list of changes that happened. Now I can say, okay, this was the one that changed and this is the control that was not identified. I can now choose them and I'll say merge the changes and I'll save the model. So all my test cases that were referencing this particular page is now updated, and now I can go ahead and get my test executed smoothly, and I need to do a refresh and I just started, and the script should run smoothly. So this eliminates a significant amount of overhead when it involves to maintaining automation test suites. Now I'll show you how to build an end-to-end workflow. So my application goes through a series of screens, and I have already captured that information, so I'm going to reuse them. Now the first page was the type of vehicle, so you basically then choose the type of vehicle and you drag and drop it inside your truck calculations. The second one is the vehicle data, then we had the insurance, product choice, and a quote page. So you can now then drag them and add them to your truck calculation. So that is how my one test case looks like. So it goes through a series of screens and it gets a quote. Now, what I showed you before was that I had some static test data sitting in a spreadsheet. Now, if I had my test data in a third party, in an external data source, like this spreadsheet where each column is my test data, and this is the expected outcome from the application. So you can now connect your external data source to your test case. So what you can do is, you can now say convert this to a template, and you can now connect your data source to it. So I'm connecting my test data source. For example, I choose a random spreadsheet and I connect it, and it's going to load the data from this particular worksheet. I click OK. Now you need to go and map the fields, because my test data says the vehicle brand is this that needs to be tested. So what you can do is, you can use the convention, because this is Excel, so you have to basically say Excel, and you can now connect your test data to it. Now if I do a mapping, my entire test case is going to look like this. So this is my test data that is mapped from my spreadsheet, and so we have done the mapping. Now once the mapping is done, there are several operations that I need to perform on the application. Now let me quickly go to another screen here. Now, pardon me. So in this page, I have several operations that I need to do. One is, I get a quote number that is generated on this application. I need to take this quote number, store it in some place, and then reuse it again. Now, with Tasker, you can achieve it by using this action mode called buffer. Every operation that you want to perform on as a control is governed by the value that you choose from this action mode. Now we are telling this test tab, take the value from the quote number field that you see on the page, which is this one, and store it in a variable called quote number. Now you can reference this quote number in your subsequent test tab, for example here, by using a convention saying B. So you can now say quote number. Now the other thing that we are trying to do on the page is, we have a bunch of calculations here, and we are doing some tests here. For example, in this case on the page, we are trying to verify that the column premium net and the row premium tax has a particular value. So if you want to do a comparison like that, so you're basically doing a comparison. Similarly, so every test case we are doing some comparison, and this is how we know that a particular test case passed or failed. So for example, if I wanted to do something like this, so if I wanted to compare my test data with my test data in a spreadsheet, so I'm going to basically link this. When the test executes, it's going to compare the value from my spreadsheet, which is this, and match it with what it sees in the application, and tells you if a particular test passed or failed. Okay? So that's how you create the mapping. So I'm verifying a bunch of things here with my calculations, and I'm also doing another operation here. Now what happens here is, we have a send code button, so you can, and you see the restart button is disabled. So you can now click the send button, and it waits till the restart button is enabled. Now Tasker gives you a much elegant way of handling these synchronization issues. Now what I'm telling the test tab is, click on the send button on that page and wait till the restart button is enabled. Now it's going to wait till the restart button gets enabled, and then it does the restart operation. So at this point now you can now go and say basically restart, and it closes the application. So what we've done so far is we've created the test steps for a test case. We have now provided instructions on what needs to be tested as part of a particular test, and what needs to be verified. Now once you do that, you can then go and create something called template instance. So this basically maps your test cases with the test data and the instructions, and gives you those list of executable tests. Now obviously we modeled some requirements for trucks, and these are the tests that involve the trucks, and we need that information updated against your requirement, so that you know that a particular requirement has test cases for validation. So you can now choose the test cases and basically just go and drag and connect them into your. So I have now multiple test cases that validate the truck functionality, and I have traceability between my test case and my requirements. Now once you have the requirements, once you have the test cases created, you then need to now take the requirements that were generated and we are going to do an execution. So we then go inside this section and we can now create something called an execution list. Now, execution list is a way in which you group all your test cases together for management. And I can now say truck test cases for regression. And you can then now pick the test cases that you want. In this case, I'm picking these test cases. And you can now then drag it back to your execution list. So I now just pick it and I take it to my execution list and I drag and drop it. So this is my place where I run the test cases. Now I can now go ahead and execute a test case from here. So I have not synchronized the module, so it's going to wait there, but I can always proceed with my test execution from here. So I can now proceed with my test execution. I can now say forward, and I can go to the next page and it will continue with the test. So that's a very good feature. So it's now running my test execution, verifies the test, and it's going to continue with the test result. And if we go back into Tosca, you know why this particular test failed. Because it was trying to verify certain things here. So it was trying to verify net and trying to match it with the test data. It did not match, so the test step failed. Now, what you do is you can basically synchronize all your executions with Polarian. Now, what this does is basically allows you to submit. So, for example, we have a defect here. Now, if you look at my old test, I have a defect here. And you can basically right-click and say submit a defect into Polarian, and it can submit a defect. So, once I submit the defect, I can now get a change request ID. So, I can now say, so all my data about the defect is now available here. So I now have a particular defect identifier that I received, and I can now open the defect inside Polarian. It's now going to open an instance of the Polarian application that I have, and it's going to take you to that defect. So any information that you have, that's my truck defect that I had submitted, and you can now work through the workflow inside Polarian and manage the defect inside there. Now at any point of time you need information about the status of a defect, you can always say synchronize the defect states, and it will give you an update on the status of all the items of this execution list. And so this way you have traceability now, because we know what happened with that particular requirement that we were testing. So we were testing automobile insurance. We now know the test cases that are executed, and you have complete traceability between your test cases through your execution. So I cannot, because it's already connected. So as you can see, we have traceability being maintained right from your requirements through test case through your execution. Now this information is submitted to Polarian, and you can now work through the defect inside Polarian and get an update on the status of a particular work item from inside Tosca as well. So that is pretty much about how you can integrate with, how Tosca integrates with Polarian, and how you can use Tosca to build automated test suites and integrate with the application lifecycle model that is managed from inside Polarian. Over to you, Daniel. Thanks. Thanks, Daniel. Daniel, I think you're on mute.
No, thank you very much. I was already talking and I was muted. Okay, good for me. Okay, so I will keep it short to have a look at Polarian. So in Polarian, we will now get the traceability as well, because we want to see if there are any changes made outside of Polarian. And we will see in this truck has now 5 test cases. And if we have a look at this work item list, and we want to see the tree list to see the full tree of this requirement, we get this truck work item in here, and we will see that we have these 5 truck items, and below this truck 1 we do have this test execution and the defect. So you've got the traceability, which was in Tosca, you do have in Polarian as well. And in this defect right now, you can say, okay, we see the problem which was occurred in Tosca, and of course we can now say, okay, we need to implement or we need to work on this defect. And because of this, we want to add some source code to this work item. Or while we were implementing this, we want to track our work records in here. I think that's enough for today for the Polarion side. Of course, there are plenty of other things, but we are running out of time, so we will go into the Q&A part where we'll show you the round trip, and because of the defects, of course, there can be new requirements. But that was the first round of the life cycle right now, and we'll have a look for your questions and answer your questions. I've already had some questions in the Q&A panel and answered them via chat, but of course we can also answer some questions directly. So let's have a look for the Q&A. If there are any questions, I have an open question, and the question is if I've done this round trip and I've got an export of this, and the question is if you can, for example, use every Office version you want. Well, the answer is first we support the Microsoft products. So if you have an OpenOffice, for example, or LibreOffice, you can. They are not officially supported, but what might work is that you open these OpenOffice documents once in a Microsoft product, save them as a docx file, and then you can import them or do a round trip with it. So this is a little bit of workaround, and the same is for imports. We need this docx, so you need an Office 2007 or higher to do this import or round trip, because we need this docx format. Okay, let's have a look for another thing. Do you have something, Siver?
No, I don't have anything here.
Okay, let me check. Yeah,
I don't see any questions.
I do have another thing which was sent to me, and well, there is a question. I've mentioned this automotive template. If there is, for example, a medical template, and yes, we provide a medical template as well, for example, just as an example. We do have lots of templates, and it's not, well, we are already working on different templates as well. So right now we are talking about requirements and everything. But of course, you can also use Polarion for different behavior, like holiday planning or something. So it's really independent from software or hardware companies or whatever you plan. If you need to track something and you need this traceability, you can use Polarion for this one. And so because of that, we are currently working on more templates, but we already have some templates. Okay, let me check. I think the rest of the questions were already answered. Yeah, okay. Okay. Then if we don't have any questions left, of course, we want to thank you, and you can contact us. I would say Siver starts because he's on top of the slide. You can have your last words to the audience.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us, and we'll be glad to assist you with any queries that you may have. Okay,
I want to thank you as well. If you do have any questions now, especially for Polarion, you can contact us or can visit our website. On this website, we will see a lot of tutorial videos and a lot of more stuff about Polarion, because this was only a small part of Polarion right now. And yeah, of course, we do have more webinars in the future. So please have a look at these webinars. And we also do have webinars in different kind of languages. Right now we had English. We also do have something in German, but we also have, I think, something in Italian and Spanish and everything. So if you need more information and you want to see more about Polarion, please visit our website or contact us via this email address, and we will forward it to the colleagues who should be available for you. And for the rest, I want to thank you. Have a nice evening, have a nice day, or have a nice morning, depending on where you live. Hopefully we'll see you the next time for a webinar as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the time.